Life is an inner dance between polarities. The law of polarity states that there's an opposite for everything in our world. This is necessary for balance within our universe. Everything has a duality, a built in opposite that cannot exist without the other. Love and hate, good and bad, light and dark, birth and death. Without one, we couldn't experience the other. Without darkness, we couldn't experience light. You can see it as two sides of the same coin. The famous yin and yang symbol also depicts the polarities. In between the polarities, there's a space, a void, a stillness, a center, a balance point, a 0 point. If you pull a pendulum 30 degrees to the right, it will swing 30 degrees to the left, and it will keep swinging until it reaches the center again. Depending on how much you live your life at the polarities, at the extremes, this is what will show up in your life. But more on this a bit later in the episode. In my first episode, you might remember me talking about the things we need to heal. I said it's basically our wounded inner child, our wounded feminine, and wounded masculine. We have already covered the inner child and our core wounds in the second episode. So what is the feminine and masculine about, you might wonder? These are two polarizing energies within each and every one of us. If we would oversimplify things, we would say that the feminine is the being and the masculine is the doing. In the yin and yang symbol, the dark pattern, the yin, represents the feminine, and the light pattern, the yang, represents the masculine. When we talk about these energies, we are not referring to female or male. Everyone has feminine and masculine energy within them regardless of their gender. Yet again, these are only words for our minds to put things into boxes and try to comprehend energetic concepts. A beautiful way that the feminine and masculine are portrayed is that the masculine is the riverbank and the feminine is the river. In order for the river to flow freely, the structure of the riverbank needs to be in place. When our core wounds as children appear, we get out of balance, out of that 0 point, and start to experience the world as a place we need to protect ourselves from. We stop living with an open heart, no longer free and willing to experience whatever life has to offer us. Life instead starts being a constant reminder of that hurt you once experienced, and you want to protect yourself from that. You might think that you are going to war with the world, but you are actually going to war with yourself. You do so by starting to close down your heart, and thus thinking you are protecting it from further hurt. You also start to alter your natural and authentic expression in this world. So instead of just accepting everything as it is and going with the flow, to use the river analogy again, you try to control the current instead of flowing with it. You start trying to control, manipulate outcomes, suppressing how you actually feel, and so on. In doing so, you're going from the divinely balanced feminine and masculine into aspects of the wounded feminine and masculine as a protection mechanism. Now, let's get a little bit better acquainted with the different aspects of the polarities in its healed and wounded states. The divine, either the unwounded or healed, aspects of the feminine are being intuitive, grounded, open hearted, unconditionally loving, receptive, magnetic, connected, healing, sensual, radiant, confident, compassionate, empathetic, supportive, reflective, nurturing, open, creative, trusting, vulnerable, flowing, effortless, surrendered, and with healthy boundaries. The feminine, in its wounded state, are aspects such as being insecure, needy, manipulative, codependent, inauthentic, overly emotional or emotionally numb, envious, and being in our victimhood a lot. There are also aspects of the wounded feminine that tend to be over apologizing, over explaining, self blaming, comparing, fearing vulnerability, and seeking external validation. Common feelings connected to this are feeling unworthy, powerless, guilt, and shame. Imposter syndrome, struggle with receiving pleasure, and difficulty expressing one's needs are also common themes. The feminine usually has a fear around, am I too much? Society may also see the more softer and sensitive side of the feminine aspect as being weak. People feel as if they have to be strong and tough because of the current value system in our society. No one really knows how to balance and heal their inner turmoil. So instead, we just march on as robots, trying to numb out whatever we feel. But in doing so, we go into the wounded masculine instead. The masculine in its wounded state are represented with aspects such as being controlling, aggressive, overreactive, withdrawing, avoidant, too competitive, abusive, unstable, forceful, dominating, demanding, defensive, judgmental, confrontational, manipulative, emotionally unavailable, selfish, greedy, afraid of failure, and extremely critical. Also, spending energy on overdoing and overthinking. The masculine usually has a fear around, am I enough? Whereas the masculine in its healed capacity is deeply present, non judgmental, supportive, gentle, disciplined, focused, precise, aware, logical, confident, discerning, protective, honest, accountable, assertive, humble, takes responsibility with healthy boundaries, offers stability and security, is of service with high integrity and precision. The left side of the body is represented by the feminine, and the right side of the body, the masculine. So many times, a controlling overdoer tends to have some issue with some part of their right side. So, the first step in healing these polarities is to become aware of them and their aspects. Look at all the aspects and see which ones you recognize in yourself. Which aspects are healed versus wounded, and within the different aspects, how balanced are they? What we want to be striving for is the divine balance between the feminine and masculine within ourselves. Like with all the polarities, find the golden middle ground in between them. Find the 0 point and from that point choose what we create and experience instead of letting our wounds, fears, and limiting beliefs run the show. So, if the first step is awareness, or actually willingness and acceptance comes first, the willingness to heal and the acceptance of what is, what was, and what will be. And then comes the awareness of what actually is. To explore with curiosity what aspects and patterns are dominant in your life. How do you react to triggers? Do you often shut down or numb your emotions? Do you often feel like the world is unfair to you and you are a victim of your reality? Do you feel a very strong need to be in control of most aspects in your life? Are you flexible and spontaneous with things in your life and allow yourself to go with the flow? Do you have healthy boundaries in your life, or do you often agree to do things and go to places you actually rather not be doing? Are you in contact with your heart's desires? And are you good at filling your own cup before tending to others? Do you follow your intuition, or do you do things against your gut feeling at times? Do you cross your own boundaries and values at times just to fit in? Do you trust in life and let it unfold in its divine timing, or do you push your agenda by hustling at every cost to reach your goals? Do you do life like a robot? Eat, sleep, work, repeat. Do you allow your feelings to flow freely when they arise, or do you shut them down? Do you judge yourself or your body when it's not behaving properly in accordance with your schedule? Do you, as a woman, manipulate by using your charm? Or do you, as a man, manipulate by using dominance? I could go on how to ask yourself curious questions around the different aspects. But the key is to be curious and be honest with yourself on how you actually live, perceive, navigate, and react to life. It is possible to live a life fully in peace, regardless of your circumstances. After mapping out the different aspects, then you'll need to figure out which ones are wounded and which ones are merely unbalanced. Let's say that you have a pattern of overworking, which is an aspect of the wounded masculine. Does that stem from a place of needing to prove your worth, or that you go around and people please too much and therefore ending up doing your colleagues' work for them? If so, then we're in the vicinity of wounds needing to be looked at, which means you're back at the inner child healing around rejection. If your overworking tendencies are connected to the fact that you are so passionate about what you're doing that it doesn't even feel like work, then we're probably rather on the scale of balance. Then you need to carve out more time during the day to rest and recover in stillness. Even if you don't feel like you need it, because the adrenaline of your passionate demeanor keeps you going, your body still needs it. We need to be able to switch between our sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system in order to be able to, for example, digest our food properly and keep our bodies balanced. The seemingly easy remedy here is just to work a little less and rest a little more and be mindful about the balance. Let's go with another example. Let's say that you are full of creativity and ideas and you go around all day just dreaming about and envisioning cool things that you'd like to create. But you never take action on them. You never take any physical, actual steps towards those ideas or creative projects actually coming to life. then you're too much in your feminine and need to support your creative flow, the river, with the structure of the riverbank, the masculine aspects of doing. Here, you also need to look closely at why you are shying away from taking action. What wounds or limiting beliefs are holding you back? To be able to do this mapping of all the aspects, radical honesty is required. Otherwise, you're just wasting your time. And sometimes you might not even know the answer, and that's okay. But then you need to be honest with that. You can always circle back when you've observed something new within an aspect and re-evaluate. Something else that also requires being radical is the next step in the process, which is taking radical responsibility. Taking responsibility that you are the creator of your own life, regardless if it's created consciously or subconsciously. Everything in your life are consequences of your level of self love, wounds, limiting beliefs, contracts, thoughts, choices, habits, karma, awareness, and so on. The good news is that most of them you can impact. On the other hand, which brings us to the next step in the process, is that it requires your commitment. Looking, seeing, feeling, meeting, compassionately witnessing, healing, understanding, changing are all things that can be and feel overwhelming to many. This journey is not for the faint hearted. It really takes commitment. But when you do, and you start seeing results of your work and see how the inner impact greatly translates into positive outer impact, then you will realize that there is no going back to your old ways. Just a determined march forward towards the highest, most healed version of yourself that enjoys all aspects of life because full responsibility has been taken and your life is filled with things that light you up authentically. You are no longer playing any roles or are in need of protecting your heart and wounds because you now live with an open heart that allows all experiences of life to flow through you without resistance to what is. You know that everything is happening for you and are less occupied with labeling things as good or bad. All are gifts for your growth. Up until now, I have mainly been covering the wounding and healing of the feminine and masculine, which is closely tied to the wounding and healing of your inner child. But even in a more healed state, these polarities, like all other polarities, need navigation over time. I'm going to use the Tao as discussed by Michael A. Singer in the book Untethered Soul. The Tao basically means the way or the path and comes from Taoism, which is a Chinese philosophy. Circling back to the pendulum I talked about in the beginning, the Tao is the middle, the center, where no energy is pushing in either direction towards the extremes, towards the polarities. This center, though, isn't fixed or static. Everything has its yin and yang, its balance point. It's the harmony of all of these balance points woven together that forms the Tao. A good analogy for this is sailing. The circumstances of nature are changing all the time. So, as a good sailor, you need to read the signs of your environment, of nature, to navigate how to adjust accordingly. The strength of the wind, the sail, the rudder, the tension of the ropes of the sail, The interplay of forces determine where you'll find the sweet spot, the balance point to move forward in the most effortless and effective way, which is also changing with the inevitability of nature's changing circumstances. You move from balance point to balance point. In the Tao, you are blind and have to learn to be blind. You can use your cane to feel out the edges, the extremes, the yin and yangs, to be informed on where not to go. You should constantly look for where you are living in the extremes to move into balance, into harmony. Another example is that of eating. If you look at one extreme, which is eating too much and overindulging, that is going to be harmful for you and your health. The other extreme, on the other hand, if you're eating too little or not at all, will have the same harmful effect on you and your health. The key is obviously to eat balanced. Okay, so how do we take this broad philosophical theory and make it even more relatable and useful in our day to day life? Let's take an example of service to others versus service to self. First of all, we need to evaluate if we have any wounded aspects around each part. Usually, there is some of that wounded feminine aspect of codependency present when it comes to service to others. That many times also go hand in hand with the martyrdom and victimhood around always doing everything for everyone else. Maybe you like it in one way because you feel your self worth increase when you do things for others and they appreciate it. But usually these aspects tend to be out of balance and you deplete yourself in the process, especially over time. As a result, you'll also start feeling even more in your victimhood since you are doing so much for others, but you don't feel like you're getting the same back, or you have a hard time receiving so, even if the support might be available to you. You don't ask for it or can't receive it. The only way to change this pattern is going to the root cause of your core wound that has made you believe that in order to be worthy of being and receiving, you need to do things for others. You also need to start giving yourself what you need and want. You need to fill your own cup before giving to others. Here is where the cane comes in handy. You have to feel your way as you go. What do I need in order to fill up my self-love cup? When is it full enough for me to feel like I have access to share to others? When I share my time and energy with others, am I doing it from a place of selfless giving, or am I trying to get something in return? Maybe you feel like this doesn't apply to you at all. Maybe you're really good at focusing your time and energy on yourself, but you're not worrying too much about others. Maybe you spend all of your days thinking about how you can get as much as possible out of each situation that you are in. Then maybe your exploration is to evaluate how you can move from the extreme of service to self and see how you can be in service to others. How can you balance the scale and create more harmony in the whole? How can you move with the way and live in the Tao? A common way that we're taken out of our center are triggers. Triggers are usually tied to some wounded part of ourselves. The ego is trying to protect the wound by alarming, don't go there, don't do that, don't be in this situation, or whatever it might be. They can make us feel anything from uneasy all the way to full on fight or flight, depending on the trigger. A healed and centered aspect wouldn't even bother with whatever is going on the outside because it knows it's got peace within their center. So, except from your wounds, what are you protecting in your life? Your ego, pride, vanity, laziness, greed, fear, your story, your image, your facade. All these things that take you out of center are leaking enormous amounts of energy. Energy that could be fruitfully spent on first filling your own cup and then being of service to the whole. When we're allowing ourselves to go off center, we're also usually in the past or the future. You spend energy on the fact that someone cut you off in traffic this morning, that you got dumped a year ago, or that your teacher didn't give you an A in high school. Or we spend energy on living in the future by worrying about the interest rate going up, if you're going to meet your partner in time to be able to have kids, or some future sickness that might happen to you. All these things are just pulling away the energy from the one thing you do have, the present moment. That is all we got, at all times. Yet another polarity, yet another extreme, where you can use the cane to feel out the edges on where not to go. Rather seek your way into finding the center, the 0 point, the Tao. As you center by not participating in the swings, the energies will naturally find their balance. You will become much clearer because so much energy is flowing up in you. This is because all the energy that you otherwise had wasted is now available to you. Another thing that is causing so much energy leakage is us not feeling our feelings. Usually, we were never taught how to safely hold space for our feelings. That makes them become so scary and overwhelming that we rather use all our energy on pushing down our feelings or numbing them out by using toxic coping mechanisms such as overworking, drinking, overexercising, overeating, etc. Our feelings usually derive from an emotion in our body. Emotions are, like the word hints, energy in motion. If we would allow our emotion just to pass through as they need, without attaching to them, they would only last 90 seconds. Emotions most often come from our subconscious, and it's the brain's response to what is going on within the body or what is triggered within you from the outside, like a person, object, or situation. If we were to just hold space and allow the emotion to run its course, it would be over quite fast. But since we're not used to doing this, it just gets too uncomfortable, so we get attached to the emotion, thus creating feelings around the emotion, feelings that we want to control by using our mind and trying to understand it, and then we attach a story to it. Then, by controlling the narrative around the story and then trying to, as quickly as possible, squash the feeling by suppressing, avoiding, or numbing the feelings. I'll give you an example. Your partner asks you a question if you've done that thing that they asked you to do a while back. Since you haven't done that thing, an emotion arises within you in accordance to your historical data set and programs running in your brain, where demanding parents throughout your upbringing might have instilled in you that your worthiness is connected to what you do and not who you are. This emotion that arises in your body could be felt through and it would be over in 90 seconds. But instead, we tend to attach and create a story. The story of our partner upsetting us and starting getting all different feelings around it. Feelings such as injustice might arise. You start becoming defensive and thinking about all the things that you actually have done and all the things you wished for your partner to have done. And before you know it, you have A, not felt your emotion and therefore stored that emotion in your body. B, created an array of feelings that you now have to manage that will make your overthinking mind spin. C, attach yourself to a story that your partner is out to get you and you have to defend yourself from the attack and gone to war with both yourself and your partner. This is also just a 2-minute sequence out of your life, which is day in and day out filled with situations that could trigger things within you, which is rarely even connected to what is actually going on in the present moment, but rather stored emotions that were never felt and keeps on looping in your system until they are felt. Since energy can't be destroyed and only transformed, the only way to end the loop is to feel it through and thereby transform it. As you might have heard, where attention goes, energy flows. So either we can go to war with everything and everyone at all times, and the only one that we are really fighting is ourselves. Or we can choose our healing and our peace over and over again. Once we've cleared a bit of the backlog on the stored looping emotions that haven't been felt, we will quickly start to see that we have so much more energy at our disposal than before, because we're not constantly leaking energy on things that at the end of the day doesn't really matter or create anything of value to us. So, how do we wrap up this both broad and deep dive into polarities, balance, and energy optimization? Every encounter and situation in your ever changing present moment is a reflection on where you are at and opportunity to heal and balance yourself. Everything that isn't received with peace inside you is a tell on where there's still tension and work left to do, emotions left to feel and transform, where you aren't balanced in your 0 point. When we eventually are in this healed and balanced 0 point with our energy intact, there are no longer any limitation to what we can envision and create. As long as we follow the current and trust the divine timing of things unfolding and our unique paths, the journey will not only be a smooth sailing, but even so an enjoyable ride. Until next time.